Hello and welcome to Undercommon Taste. This is a podcast where we create and discuss homebrew content for tabletop RPGs.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Ian. Happy birthday to you.
Now, why you gotta go and do that to me?
I mean, you did it to me before, so we've heard about spare play and all.
Yes, that is true. I made you DM one of our anniversary games on your birthday, not realizing it was your birthday. So yes, I guess turnabout is fair play. Anyway, I'm Ian Woodworth. I'm joined by my co-host James Daly, and today we are joined by returning guest John, host of Tale of the Manticore. John,
hey
welcome
guys.
back to Undercommon Taste.
Thank you so much for having me. Very happy to be here and hanging out with you guys on a Monday night.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. And welcome back. Again, you were on fairly early on.
I think so.
Yeah, because we invited you back for episode 100.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So this would be actually your third time. I think you're our second three-time guest.
The trifecta.
Rob Hilferty would be the other one.
Very cool.
Yeah, so again, welcome to the show. We have talked about Tale of the Manticore several times on our show because it is an amazing podcast. And if you haven't gone and listened to it, I wholeheartedly request that you go and do that.
Yeah, like as soon as this episode's over, pause it, start that one, and then come back probably 6 months later after you finish both seasons because they're amazing. And you just fly through the episodes.
Honestly,
they're wonderful.
Honestly, I don't think it would take 6 months because all of the episodes are like half an hour long. And
this
so
is true.
It's very bingeable.
It is extremely bingeable. In fact, that is what I do because, again, the episodes are so amazing and they do go so quickly that I get up. If I don't have at least like 4 episodes to listen to, I'm like, no, that's not enough. I need more. So I'll wait till I get a backlog and then I just consume them all at once.
Well, you are too kind. Thank you very much.
And you're coming up pretty close to the end of season 2 at this point, I think.
That's right. I am. I think so. At the time of this recording, I've released episode 71, and I can tell you it does end at 76. So that means there's only 2 months left in the season.
Ooh.
And so I've played through and written, I never know what the verb is. I've written / played through to the end. So I've finished. It's just a really weird feeling for me because it's done for me now. And I'm going through a bit of postpartum while the show is still coming out. So it's a weird headspace because I've been living with these characters now for a couple of years and that it's over. That's over for me.
Yeah, that's got to be a rough transition because, I mean, just as a listener, I get attached to the characters. And so as the player and the creator, that has to be hard to say goodbye at times.
It's just like when you're playing an RPG and, you finish that one campaign that you've been doing for ages and you start something new. And like the new thing is exciting and fresh, but there's a legacy that you're leaving behind. You know what I mean? And so there is a bit of that heartbreak, but it's all good.
Speaking of legacy, though, I mean, that is one thing that you did at the beginning of season 2 that I thought was great, is you had that small hint of a tie-in between season 1 and season 2. So the listeners did know that it's the same realm. It's, within a reasonable time frame of each other. And I thought that was a really nice, subtle kind of tie-in. I'm like, okay, I know where I'm back at now, and it felt very comfortable and a nice transition. So that was well done on your part.
Thanks. You ever look at a novel that's like thick, like 1,000 pages, and you look at that novel and you're like, I want to read that, but boy, what a commitment. And it turned like I have novels that I just have ignored for years and years just by virtue of them being too thick. And when I started season 2, I had this feeling like, what if I never get a new listener because they see this thick stack of episodes and they think, Jesus, I don't want to listen to all of these just to catch up. And so the very first decision I made was that season 2 has to be like fresh start. You don't need anything. And I think that's the first thing I say in season 2 when I come onto the mic is like, you don't need to know anything about what happened before. And I think I'm going to keep doing that because if I want to get new listeners and they don't want to start all the way from the beginning, it's a long way to go. I want it to be like clear and as easy as possible to just start at whatever that episode 1 is. And so I'm going to do that again. I don't exactly know what I'm going to be doing for the next season, but definitely it will be a blank slate. The world continues, the lore continues, but it's just background information at this point.
Awesome. One, that is a great idea. And two, that makes me very excited. Season 3, I'm like, yes, okay, because I was going to ask if there was plans or workings for that right off the bat. So super excited to hear that.
You heard it here first. Season 3 confirmed.
Yeah. I'm too dumb to stop, I think. No, to be honest, I just actually love having it in my life. It gives me something to think about. It gives me something to do. It gives me a constant story. And like, you guys make podcasts, like, not all of the work is fun. And sometimes you get burned out on editing audio and stuff. But
yeah,
I can't stop making the show. So I'm just going to keep on going. I keep thinking about ways to, like, what am I going to do differently? What am I going to do to advance it, or even to experiment and take a risk? And I don't know what those are going to be yet, but I know that I just got to keep going. It's like any game of D&D or any other RPG. You just, when one's done, you just want to do it again.
Absolutely.
Because it's what we love doing, I guess.
So will season 3 finally have a Manticore in it?
I don't think I can ever. I think that's the one monster I can never use.
That's like whenever you finally get to the end and you decide to hang up the hat for good. That's when the Manticore comes out, right?
That's right. Because I would have to have him pull off his face, and it turned out to be a rubber mask, and it was Old Man Withers the whole time.
Yes.
That's the only way to handle him.
Now, you talk about, things you want to try and things that you want to experiment with. Now, I have noticed in season 2, you have had a lot more in the way of voice actors, and you've had some songs. So I don't know if those songs were written specifically for the podcast, and they fit in theme, so I'd imagine they would be. But I do know you've put a lot more production into the podcast, again, with more like narrative story with the actors and stuff, and that's been very enjoyable.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a big goal for season 2. It's like, can I, one, fix the mistakes I made in season 1? And there were many, and that's fine. Warts and all, it's all good. But for season 2, there were some lessons learned, and I wanted to up my game production-wise. And so I thought more voice actors, do something with accents so that, if I have British actors, then they could be from this region of the map. And if I had North American, from this region, and so on and so forth. And I also was very lucky to find a core bunch of guys that were willing to kind of commit for the long haul, because that's a tough one. I mean, I could ask somebody, hey, do you want to come onto the show and do a cameo? It's 6 lines, and they'll maybe say, okay. And then, maybe they kind of forget, and I have to nudge them, and a week later, oh, yeah. But it's a very different thing to ask somebody, hey, would you be a character? It might last 2 years.
Yeah, or it might last 2 weeks, depending on how the dice roll.
Exactly that, yeah.
And that, for those who haven't encountered Pendulum, that is, while the narrative of the story is amazing, it is all driven by the actual dice rolls. And so, as a creator, you have very little understanding what's going to happen in the future, correct?
That's right. I have basically the knowledge that a DM would have, which is, so you have that sort of power of creation, but you don't know what's going to happen because a lot of the decision making is left up to the dice. And so I like that balance of, I have some control, but there's definitely a big element of chaos in there. And for me, actually, that's what makes it an exciting medium or mode. I don't know what the word is, but I don't think I could be satisfied to just write a novel. I don't think it would be as compelling for me as doing what I'm doing. And I don't think it would be as liberating either. I think writing a novel would be terrifying, because if I didn't know what my major resolution was going to be as I was writing, I would be so scared of not being able to find that resolution, of ending up where I wanted to end up. But doing that hybrid semi-actual play thing where it's kind of like writing a novel or an audio drama, but also so random, it's completely liberating, because now I don't have that pressure, because I don't make any promises that things are going to wrap up with the heroes winning. That's not at all a foregone conclusion. They might very well lose, but that is what makes it exciting.
Absolutely.
And yeah, actually, I think we'll see more people get into this mode as they discover some of the newer shows like Legend of the Bones, Tales from the Fireside, Stories from the First Watch, Echoes of Eschaton, that are kind of coming into this little scene. And I mean, there's so much room here for people who want to do something exciting and new. And like I say, it's really liberating, because you're just sort of writing and playing and gaming with no expectations of what has to happen. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. Yeah.
It's such a weird thing, especially to somebody who doesn't know the shows well. But that is how it is. It still feels very cutting edge and exciting, and I kind of feel like a pioneer still, even though 4 years now.
Well, I mean, you definitely are blazing a trail, and I've heard several people wanting to do something similar to your podcast. I've not heard others, so I will need to check out those you've mentioned. But yeah, the way you've processed and performed, like I said, has just been, one, it was extremely original, and then two, extremely well executed. And so, yeah, a huge fan of your work.
Thanks. And I have to credit Abel Enzo of the Iron Realm. As far as I can tell, he came up with this. And I don't even know if he did it deliberately. I think when he launched his show, it's called the Iron Realm, and it's been running for years, like 8 or 9 years or something. When he launched it, I think his big idea was, I'm going to make a play-by podcast show. And so it was a solo game of old school D&D, just like what I'm doing. But he had this idea where you would attach yourself to one of the characters. Like you would make a character, but attach their fate to one of his characters. And he had this idea where you could play by podcast. But he added these little vignettes of narrative and with, voice acting and sound effects and music. And it was that I kind of latched onto, and I was like, what is this? This is amazing. I want to do that. Actually, my first thought was I want to find lots of other things like this, but nothing else like it existed. He was the true OG original guy, so I got to give him credit.
I remember hearing the ad for Iron Realm all through season 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's the guy.
So one of the reasons why we asked you to come back was we wanted to talk to you a little bit about your world building process. Because you did talk a bit about how you went and built up some of the backstory for the world that you threw your characters into for season 2 in that sort of interlude between seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever you start your world building experiments or you're creating your scenarios, where do you like to start, and how much detail do you incorporate from the beginning, and how much detail do you just sort of allow to grow organically through play?
So I did it differently for each season, and I think it's because I learned a lesson, but I'll go back a bit and explain how that works. So season 1, I just took basically a white piece of paper and I drew a forest in it. And I was like, okay, we're starting here. And then a character would say, oh, I'm from Sparrow Lake. And so, okay, now I need to draw a lake and a little village. So I would draw that at about the right distance in a random direction. And then I thought, okay, this character says he was abducted by goblins off the road. Okay, so now there has to be a road between Sparrow Lake and somewhere else. And so basically, as the story gets just made up, just, pulling it out of my butt, I'm adding these elements. And so it's exciting at first because you're populating the map in a very organic way, making it up on the fly. But, and it's a big but, as RuPaul likes to say. I've always wanted to say that on a podcast, and now I've done it. Box checked. So the thing is that this method works really, really well for sort of the first stages of your story. But at some point, you attain a level of complexity that starts to get a little stressful, at least if you care about continuity. And maybe you shouldn't care about continuity so much, but I was kind of obsessing over it. I wanted everything to make sense, travel distances and directions and everything I could. And so eventually, it's not like a forest and a road and a town. It's 12 towns and a bunch of other names and references to all of these kingdoms. And that map, it starts to get a bit busy, and you have to kind of make not just a map, but almost a reference material for yourself as you go. And so that is why in season 2, I thought to myself, I'm going to try this other experiment. It really was an experiment where I create a generator for a settlement so that I don't accidentally paint myself into a corner or give myself continuity errors, or at least give myself the best chance to avoid them. So I'm going to determine a few things ahead of the story instead of completely on the fly. And so I'm still making up a ton of stuff as I go, still just kind of pulling ideas out of the air, and it's still organic. But I could always fall back to this framework or this history. And I knew in season 2 that I wanted to really center on an urban story. And so I thought, well, if I'm going to have this city, then it makes sense to create a settlement generator and then use it And that's how I came up with this thing, Pendulum, that maybe we'll take a crack at later on tonight. And that's why I made it. I made it really for the show. And then I thought, well, that worked. I'll put it out into the world and see if other people like it too.
So now that we've brought it up, can you tell us a little bit about what Pendulum is?
So Pendulum is loosely inspired by a game called The Quiet Year. And I apologize, I can't remember the name of the creators. I really should know.
Avery Alder.
Oh, fantastic. This is one of the sort of new school games that blew my mind. There are a few things, like coming back to the hobby after many years away. I came back to the hobby and like D&D had changed a lot. In many ways I didn't like, to be honest. But that's okay. You can D&D your own way, and that's fine. But I discovered some new games that just absolutely knocked my socks off, like the Mythic GME. Just brilliant, 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 brilliant. And another one was The Quiet Year, where they have this engine, which is basically you pull a card from a deck and it says, either this happens or that happens. Now go ahead and you tell the story. So it'll say like, it tells the story of a kind of a community as well. And many people do use it, by the way, to prepare for their campaigns. I think famously the McElroys did that. Anyway, so you pick a card and it's like, oh, I don't know, it's the Jack of Hearts. And then you look it up on a chart and it says, a stranger comes to town bearing bad news. What do they say? Or a stranger comes to town bearing good news. What news do they bring? And then you make a decision and you tell that story. So I thought, I love this engine. It's so brilliant, so brilliant. Some of that DNA is in One Shot in the Dark as well, because it's also a kind of a build a map freehand as you go kind of thing. So I borrowed that idea. Again, it's inspired by it. It's not the same, but it's inspired by it. Anyway, The Quiet Year's fingerprints are all over my stuff because I love it so much. Anyway, so I did that for Pendulum too. Basically, you pick a ruler and you give them an age and a name. And then instead of picking a card, you flip a coin and the coin will say like law or chaos. And depending on which one you get, you're going to have this either or. So if it's law, it might say a conflict is resolved peacefully among the rulers. What happened? And then if you got chaos, you might say a conflict was resolved with violence among the rulers. What happened? And basically you do that, and step by step by step by step, after I forget how many, somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 or 50 prompts or something, you get a roughly 600-year history of a settlement using this generator.
No, I really love that. And like I said, just the way you can build such depth of history for your stories and your settlements, I mean, that is really fun. The history geek in me, like, once just like, oh my God, I could do so much with this.
Well, we were talking about like thick novels before.
Yeah.
Pendulum it's a bit of a thick novel, isn't it? I mean, you can't do it like One Shot in the Dark. I promise you can do it in an hour and a half, and I think that I deliver on that promise. Pendulum, you cannot do it in 1 hour and a half. Even the express version, I think you're looking at several sessions, like several half-hour sessions or something like that, and probably 3 hours, I think. Maybe even at minimum, maybe 4.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to do the full, like, 40 prompt thing, yeah. But, I mean, even if you kept it short and just, I'm going to do a dozen, you can still come up with some great stuff. And I'm a huge fan, again, games and education, D&D. These make wonderful creative writing prompts. So I mean, if you need to work on your creative writing for it, you have writer's block. This would be a great way to kind of do something sideline and break through that writer's block.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I broke out Pendulum a couple of days ago and I was playing with it, and I went through the first 11 prompts and it took me about an hour.
Yep. That makes sense. Even like, I think I put it somewhere in the instructions that, be brief, because you're going to be doing quite a few prompts. And so if you make a page for each one, you're not going to finish.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I think I settled for trying to keep it to 2 to 4 sentences per prompt.
I think that's good. Yeah, I think that works.
So I did want to know, though, why did you settle on law and chaos as your binary, as opposed to, say, something more like wheel and woe?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was the first idea that came to me, and it worked, and I went with it.
Okay.
I think
that's a perfectly reasonable answer.
I mean, it's not an interesting answer, but I think it is the answer.
I mean, whenever greatness happens, you don't question it; you just run with it.
Absolutely.
It seems to work well enough. But I mean, yeah, what a good question. I don't know.
So that Law and Chaos bit reminds me, there's an old fantasy series by David Eddings, the Belgariad, and then the Mandalorian. I think, is it the Mandalorian? I forget what the second one is.
I know what you're talking about.
Mandalorian is Star Wars.
Star Wars. I know there's another.
But I know that Eddings. Yeah.
Right. But, a theme through both of those, because the two series are interconnected, is there are two separate prophecies vying to be realized. And one is basically a law or a good prophecy and a chaos prophecy. And so this kind of has that thing too, because the prophecy itself can affect and interact things upon the world. And so I get that feel when I start going through this, and it's kind of, okay, which one's vying for which, and which one's going to enact on a series of events. So, yeah.
That is cool. And you know what? It reminds me, I think at that point I was reading the Elric Stormbringer novel. And so maybe that influenced me, because that's all about the laws of chaos. And it was such a cool read. I missed that as a kid.
I don't think I've read that one myself, actually.
You'll enjoy trying to pronounce Melniboné in your head. I don't even know how you're supposed to say it. Elric of Melniboné.
Oh, that'll be fun. I had a hard time, honestly, with Wheel of Time, and the audiobook readers, they pronounce it the Aes Sedai, and I had a very different internal reading of that. And so, like, people were talking to me, like, it took years for me to connect the two of what other people were saying when they were talking about them. Like, no, okay, you're talking about the Aes Sedai, not the Aes Sedai. I'm like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
I mean, I do that just with regular words. When I was a kid, I thought that it was melee combat, just because the only experience I had was from the printed page. And so, I thought it was deities and melee and anti-paladins. And I was pronouncing everything wrong, but it seemed right to me at the time. But those are hard to adjust to when you realize, I've been saying that wrong.
That's how it's said. Yeah.
Yeah. I did all of the Wheel of Time as audiobooks. I've never read the physical books.
Would you recommend?
Yes, and
that is a yes with a caveat.
Yes.
Okay, because talk about a thick novel. That's a lot of thick novels.
For the longest time, I thought I didn't like the female reader because it's Kate Redding and Michael Kramer do the audiobooks. And I thought that I didn't like her. And then I listened to her doing a different audiobook, and then I realized that no, the problem is that Robert Jordan can't write women.
that is a fair complaint.
I mean, I read the first one.
It wasn't her fault. It was the material's fault. And I think I first started catching on to that when I got to the 3 at the end that Brandon Sanderson finished.
Wow, you went all
the tone
the way.
Changed. Yes, I did.
How many hours is it? If one was to commit,
like 350 hours or something like that.
Gosh, that's a lot.
20. Was it 20 books?
It's 13, I think.
13 books, and they're about.
And most of them are in the 25 to 35 hour range.
Yeah.
Holy smokes! Oh my gosh!
But at the time, I had a commute that was like 45 minutes each way, and so I was finishing a book a month.
Yeah.
Just listening in the car. I mean, that's how I did.
Was it the best part of your day? Here's the big test.
Yes, it was.
It was.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
But I did all of the Wheel of Time books like that, and I did all of the Song of Ice and Fire books on audio like that. And I've done most of the Stormlight Archive books like that. I haven't done the most recent one.
That's fantastic. It's great.
The characters are extremely memorable, and Jordan's influence in fantasy. If you read The Wheel of Time, you can see his influence in a lot of fantasy that came afterwards. And so
I see. Yeah,
they are strong books to read for that, but it is a heavy commitment.
Very tropey.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that might have been. I read the first book again a long time ago, and I think I bounced off it. Is there just like a The Dark Lord? I think there was.
Yeah.
And I think even as a teenager, when I was reading that, I thought, "Oh, that is too cliched." I mean, who am I to criticize Robert Jordan?
But whenever you get to the end of book 3, you realize that he initially intended for it to be a trilogy because it's paced to wrap up at the end of book 3. And then like the last 3 chapters are him having to go and alter it because his editor told him, no, we have been extended and you're going to keep writing books.
Yeah, and that was one of my challenges with Wheel of Time too, because I read the physical books up until the point where Robert Jordan unfortunately passed, and then I was upset because I didn't know who Brandon Sanderson was and we were bringing in some other person. But the last like 3 or 4 books up to that Jordan wrote, the pace slows immensely, and it felt like he was cashing checks at that point too.
I see. Yeah.
Well,
I understand.
His mental capacity was also degrading at that point too.
That is also fair, and I was unaware of that at that point. So, but yes, a strong series. Robert Jordan's great, but we are here to talk about Tale of the Manticore and Pendulum. So let's.
The Undercommon Taste Book Club is going to close session for now.
Fair enough.
So we did talk a little bit about Pendulum. We're going to fiddle with Pendulum a little bit here in a minute. But you brought up another one of the games that you wrote, which is One Shot in the Dark, which is another really fun game. I also bought it and I broke it out last night. And yeah, it took me probably about an hour to get from beginning to end. I did manage to barely beat the boss at the end of the dungeon.
Any dungeon you can walk out of is a win.
Yeah, even if it is the fighter having to carry the lifeless body of the wizard and the cleric out with him.
That's drama, baby. That's drama.
Yeah. That is absolutely drama. Yes.
The thief there wasn't anything left because he had a green slime land on him and it ate him. So
it's a bad way to go.
It was. That's probably why my thief cursed the party right before the boss fight.
That would make sense. And the slime monster, I love slimes as a monster. Those are always a lot of fun.
Me too. And an easy mini to make on your own.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Just get a gumdrop.
So anyway, that all aside, can you please tell our listeners who maybe have not heard of One Shot in the Dark what One Shot in the Dark is?
Sure. So One Shot in the Dark is a snack-sized, ultra light solo, although it can be played with more than one person. It's meant to be played solo, all within an hour and a half, 3-act dungeon crawl. And so it leans into classic tropes even more than Robert Jordan does. I mean, shamelessly, it's got a fighter and a thief and a magic user and a cleric, and everything is boiled down to kind of like the bare essentials of those classes. And then you go into a dungeon which is generated at random, and you draw a map freehand as you go, guided by some prompts, drawing playing cards to find out if the next room contains a monster or a trap or some other kind of feature. And eventually you are led from a cave into a crypt into, I forget the other one. Is it cave to dungeon to crypt? And then there's a final.
Crypt, yes.
Yep. And then there's a final boss fight at the end. Again, the boss is randomly generated, and it's deadly and it's swingy, but I think we've got the kind of the right balance in there so that it's fun to play because you don't know how it's going to turn out to the end. That seems to be the usual experience, but the dice will do what the dice will do. And
you did do one of your bonus episodes where you played through the first level of One Shot in the Dark. I remember that.
Yes, I did.
Whenever it first came out. So if you dig through all of the back episodes, you will find it eventually.
Yeah, it's buried in the middle of season 1 somewhere, and it'll be in the title. And I think it's a 2-parter because my episodes are quite short. So I think each one is like 25 minutes or 20 minutes or something like that, just to give an example playthrough. Yeah. And for anybody who wants to try it out, again, it's a kind of like it really is a one-shot. It's the one-shot that actually can be done in one shot. That's one of its selling points. And also it's like price of a cup of coffee. I thought about making it free at one point, but eventually I decided not to do that, only because I do think that when people see free, they think no value. Like we just kind of make that association. So I made it like very, 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 very inexpensive, but not free.
I think it's like $2.
I think it might even be less than that. It might even be like $1.50.
I can't remember. One of them was $2 and one of them was $2.50. I can't remember.
Maybe.
Yeah, no. I mean, again, you're going to sit down and play it once. That's an hour and a half, and I guarantee you're going to play this through more than once. So I mean, you're at several hours of entertainment for $2.50. You really can't beat that.
Yeah, the price is really nominal. It's so that like I said, I thought about making it free, but we've all got these folders full of free PDFs that have like never been opened. And I think one of the reasons is because I think we're just programmed, for better or worse, that if we don't pay for a thing, we don't value it as much. I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember paying for music, but you used to, right? Like you used to buy that CD. You're going to listen to that damn CD.
That's right.
Right? Because you paid 10 or 15 or 20 bucks for it. And in fact, I think the more you paid for it, the more you kind of were like, I'm going to learn to like this no matter what.
Yeah.
But nowadays, music it's disposable. It's toilet paper, sadly.
No, and the one thing I really enjoy about One Shot in the Dark too is, one, I love the card mechanic with it too, and the dice. And then you have, where you're drawing your own map, and it really does feel like that. Again, talking about tropes, the 80s or 90s tropes of either like the power going out or the TV going out and needing something to sit down and play, or maybe that stormy day. But you really could do that because, you're most likely going to have a deck of cards lying around. You're going to have some gaming dice lying around, even if you're not a heavy tabletop gamer. You're going to have a lot of these things there, or you could just, use your phone and use an automated dice roll or whatever. But the things are really simple to have. You're probably going to have them on hand, and you can sit down and, it's just, again, it has that whole fantasy feel from the 90s and the late 80s. So I'm just like, yay.
I've just looked it up on the thing, and I'm trying to find the price, and I can't even see the price on. Maybe it's because I'm in some kind of publisher's view. I think that's why.
Let me see if I still had it pulled up, because I'm notorious for not closing out my tabs, but apparently I did close out that one. So, but one game that it did remind me of a bit was Dragon Strike.
Is that the old board game?
Yes.
Like with the one with the video cassette?
That came with the VHS, yeah.
I think I learned about that on the Slaying the Dragon, like the history of D&D. And then I went and I actually looked up the video on YouTube because it's so strange. But I never played it. I think I'm old enough to have played it, but I never played it.
Yeah, I didn't know of it until I moved in with my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time. And she had the copy that she and her brother had growing up, and we took it with us when we went down to Austin to visit him for her birthday one year, and we played it together down there. And it's a very similar sort of play style with, the warrior and the healer and the magic user and the thief.
Right.
And, they gain power as they go from one level of the dungeon to the next. And
well, that was an unintentional similarity. But let me tell you this. I think I know a fun fact about Dragon Strike. And one of your listeners can correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm doing this off of memory. But I'm pretty sure the guy who produced the video, like that sort of famously phantasmagorical video that goes along with it, his name was Flint something or other. He was this Hollywood mucky muck mover and shaker. But this is the Flint that the G.I. Joe character Flint was named after.
Oh, wow.
And he was he was friends with Gary Gygax and was trying to convince Gary Gygax that D&D could be, a real Hollywood enterprise. And
Absolutely,
I think a lot of money was spent and actually wasted on trying to make that happen. I don't have to tell you that a lot of D&D movies were not good before they made one that was pretty good.
Right. Yeah. I remember watching, I think it was the Jeremy Irons one. I remember watching that on a Sci-Fi Saturday one weekend in college.
Yeah.
Just to give you the idea of the quality level of that movie, which, because it was being shown alongside the likes of Sharktopus and Ice Spiders. So
yeah.
Fair.
Yeah. What was that movie? Your Highness. That was like basically a farce, a spoof off of, and it was a better D&D movie than any of the ones that had come before. Like unironically better.
Yeah. All right. So we hinted at doing a playthrough of at least the first little bit of Pendulum, just to give a feel of what it is, because again, we don't have 4 hours to devote to actually going through all of it.
Understand.
So I was thinking that we can go through, each do at least one. We'll see where we're at time-wise after we each do one prompt. If we have enough time, we'll each do a second, but we'll at least each do one.
Okay.
And so, John, as our esteemed guest today, would you like to go ahead and, I guess, give me a roll, and we'll say that even is law and odd is chaos.
Okay, that works for me. Okay, let's see. And thank you. What an honor. Here we go. I've got an 18 even.
All right, so that will be law. So the settlement begins as a hamlet. The new territory is gained peacefully through trade or diplomacy, or else it was unoccupied to begin with. Name the ruler and what is a major resource in this area.
All right, now do you want to do this sort of like we take turns, or do you want to all just jump in on this part?
I think this part we'll just talk amongst ourselves and figure this out. We'll each take turns in choosing which prompt we do next.
Great. Does anybody have a good name for a ruler?
I'm terrible at naming things.
I know, me too.
So let's just do what you suggest.
The Don John name generator?
Yeah, we're gonna pull up the name generator. And,
it sure does work.
Let's see here.
I'm going through my desk and pulling out rulers to see if any of them have a good name on them. This one says made in China. That's not a great.
What about Stapleton? Isn't that the brand that does rulers?
A swing line.
Swing line.
Lord Swing Line. You know what? Why not Lord Swing Line?
Well, I have one that is kind of similar in the first one, which would be Nathan Wine.
Okay.
Wyne.
Okay, I like it. Lord Wine. Okay.
So that's our ruler. So what is our resource?
Lord Wine, they have to have vineyards.
I guess so, yeah. We could say that the resource would be vineyards.
Mm-hmm.
We could go like very classic Greece and just do, olives and grapes.
Olives and grapes. That works. And that gives us an idea of the kind of biome or climate that we're looking at too. We just kind of model it after that Mediterranean.
And so, this would be brought up because of trade, and maybe they are between two larger cities, and this was just an area where the crops were good and some good management, and people came in to harvest. In Central California, where I grew up, it is huge now. They sell dried and processed fruits, but the place is called Casa de Fruta. And it started literally as a roadside fruit stand, and now it is like this huge complex where they ship food all over the world now. But it literally started as a roadside fruit stand.
Okay. And so I'm getting the vibe that this territory was gained through trade, that this has been bought and paid for.
I think that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Like someone saw a good value and they purchased it and like, I'm setting my empire here type thing. Or this is where my family's going to be. Yeah, this is my family farm.
Yeah, this is land that has been purchased for some princeling or something like that, and now you go and start a settlement over there.
Okay, great.
And, because we're starting as a hamlet, which I think is, 50 to 100 is the population range that you give.
Yeah.
So this says to me that basically this is for lack of a better term, the dormitories that the workers live in.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. It's a vineyard. It's a farm. That works great.
It's a manor house and the associated dormitories for the workers.
Perfect.
That's great. We need an age for this. What would be a good age for somebody who's being sent off like this to kind of prove himself? All right, now you're old enough to go and run a farm on your own. How old would you be?
Now, are they running it, or is this the person maybe that has purchased this and has set it up?
Now,
let's have it be the person who is there.
Okay.
Yeah. So if we want to, I just on a lark rolled a D100 just to get an idea, and it came up 17. And I think that could be interesting.
Yeah.
That this is a very young individual who basically their parents have sent them off to the farm in the countryside to say, okay, go run the farm.
They're grooming them for further leadership.
I like
we're going to stay here in the capital and schmooze in court. You go and take care of the business.
Yeah, I can see that.
Right, and
they just sort of get dumped into the deep end, and they have to.
It's got the conflict baked right in. Yeah. It's got that conflict baked in. It's good stuff. Okay, so I think it's good to point out that we do want to be moving through these prompts this quickly. Like this is the speed to be doing it. Otherwise, it can take a very long time. So, what did that take? About 2-3 minutes? I think that's about right. We've got our Lord Wine. Yeah. He's starting a vineyard. He's 17 years old. It's year 1, for lack of a better choice.
Right.
And then we're on to the next.
Okay.
So, James, do you want to go ahead and give us or do we want to just go ahead and use the D20 roll that you had for the number of years that pass? I mean, that was an 18, so that'd be a pretty big jump, but...
It would be a big jump. Do you want me to roll again to see how many years?
Yeah, you can. That'll work.
Let's do it. 2.
I
think that kind of makes more sense, actually, because we want to find out what goes right or what goes wrong quickly.
So now we're on year 3.
Exactly.
So James,
year 3. The ruler is 19 years old now.
He's now 19 years old. So James, go ahead and give us another roll and let me know even or odd. Odd. So we have chaos. Oh, this will be interesting. There is contention for leadership between 2 or more individuals or groups. Toss a coin to see who wins. Name the settlement.
Okay. Well, we can name the settlement first because that's kind of easy and separate, and then we'll figure out who is in contention with this young man. Is Don John open?
It is. It is.
Should we find out the name of our settlement? It could be something as simple as Wineland.
Yeah, I mean, Wine River. It'd be kind of like the brandy wine.
Oddly enough, wine just showed up as another name on the next generator. So maybe it's an inter-family or intra-family conflict.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Maybe there's like a sibling.
Especially since I rolled a d10 to randomly pick one, and it came up 3, which is wine. So I think the dice are telling me that that's who it needs to be.
There's speaking to you. It's a sibling. It is. You're right. It's a sibling for sure.
So I'm seeing a sibling like the Hamlet has done well the first 2 years, and there's a profit coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And so this other sibling's wanting to step in and like, well, everything's already set up and established. It should be mine. I should have taken that. And maybe they have some sour grapes, as it were.
Yeah. It's either an older sibling who decided they didn't want to go and do this because it looks too much like work. Right. Or it is one of the parents.
Okay.
Ooh. How about a sibling who returns from like a military duty earlier than expected? And so now they say, well, I'm older, it's mine. And the other one's like, no, you were gone, I did all the work.
Oh, so like the eldest sibling was conscripted, perhaps?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah. And then war ends unexpectedly, some foreign war. And now they're back and they want what's theirs.
What if the elder sibling is a hero, and so they actually have military backing behind them?
Good.
That's what I'm thinking is that they came back and they have this popularity going behind them, that attaboy in the court, and so they see this as, well, this is my reward for going and doing all of this.
100%. What did you do, Junior? Nothing. He's like, I built this place from the ground up. That's good. I'm going to open up Don John 2 and see if I can help out with the names, because this is one of the things, and in fact, I mentioned earlier in the instructions, it's good to have either Don John open or a list of names pre-prepared, because it's one of the common stumbling blocks, because you're going to need a lot of names.
Yeah. Okay. And so...
How about Sige? Sige. Does that sound good? Sige is the returning hero.
Okay. Sige wine?
Sige wine.
Okay.
So he's an older brother.
He's an older brother.
Let's go a D6 to see how much older he is. 1 year older. So he is 20.
That's awesome. Good. Love it.
All right. So James, give me another roll, and we'll say even Nathan is the one who gets to keep it, and odd Sige.
Odd is Sige. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sige wins.
See, and that that fits with the narrative that we're getting, because he has that upswell of support from outside, and all that Nathan really has is just I've been a successful businessman.
Yeah,
right. I think we're going to see Nathan again somehow, even if he's sent home packing. I have a feeling we're going to see him again later on. He's coming back.
Nathan built this from nothing, so I'd imagine if he chose another adventure, he would be likewise successful, and I would not be surprised if he was embittered by losing his position.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, there we go. That's prompt number 2 sorted.
So we need to name the settlement. Did we name the settlement?
We were going with something wine.
Wine, like Wine River, Wineland, Wine Hill, Wine...
I think Wine Hill would probably be...
Wine Hill.
Because you grow grapes on slopes, on hillsides,
for the
drainage.
Right. And it's their last name, and it's what they make. Sure, it all makes sense.
Yeah.
And if we didn't like it, you could always come back and change it later anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
And, place names evolve over time. So,
Yeah.
Right. So, like 50 years later, it's not Wine Hill, it's Winel or something like that.
yeah,
right?
Wine Hall. And
Wine Hall. Oh, that's...
Yeah.
There you
Yeah,
go.
I like that. Now we get like a Nordic feel to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, throwing Nordic feel into our Greek
Yeah, or to our
Why
Mediterranean.
not?
Hey, you know what? Trade
Why not?
happens. There are
Yeah.
merchants and stranger things have
that
happened.
did happen. All right. So, James, give me another D20 roll to see how many years pass before the next
15.
Ooh, wow.
15. That's a substantial one. Okay.
So Sige is 35 years old.
Yep.
Well, again, if he's a hero from combat, it would make sense that, maybe there is a period of tranquility post-conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So let me get an even or odd to see if we got law or chaos. Odd. We have chaos again. So builders begin to construct basic defenses. The project goes poorly, and the structures are shabby and weak.
Interesting. So why does this military hero have poorly constructed structures? There's got to be a story here. Is he in poor health? Or is he distracted? Or has he gone off on another campaign?
Maybe the military technology has changed.
Oh, he's like an old
Potentially.
school
Yeah,
soldier.
he's old school. Yeah, and he is living in his glory days, and he's not.
I'm
He's not
thinking
embracing- Yeah.
the vibe that I'm getting is that, because we have this underlying implied that this is a noble family, this has nobility wrapped into it. He's a cavalryman.
Okay.
His military experience is, on a horse. He doesn't have a whole lot of infantry experience. He doesn't have a whole lot of siege warfare experience.
That's good.
Yeah.
He's used to attacking, not defending.
Yeah, he's used to, I get on a horse with 500 of my buddies and we go and we charge into these guys.
Okay. I like that.
So he just doesn't have the head for, earthworks and, just the architecture aspect of it.
That's good.
I like that.
And he's a hero, so he's stubborn. He doesn't want to listen to anyone else's advice either.
The other thing I would go with that we could also incorporate is, again, Nathan was the business person. He had the acumen. Where Sige,
right.
Sige came in. And so maybe the guilds and the construction people know that he doesn't have that kind of acumen. So maybe they were grifting and skimming off the top. And so they're using low rate quality products and stuff like that. And so they are trying to grift off of the construction as well.
It's good. Yeah. Good soldier, poor businessman.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, you see that all the time throughout medieval European history. Is like, people who are good with a sword and terrible at administration.
That does happen.
Very good. That's probably enough for this prompt. We can move on.
Yeah. All right. So let's see where we are time-wise. We are... we're right at an hour. So I think we've taken about 15, 20 minutes to get through these three. I think that'll be good for right now. But that does give a very good... understanding of how the system works and the sort of things that you can do with it and why I think it's a really cool and clever system.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun.
I'm already invested in this story. I want to know what happens with Nathan and Sige.
I mean, the other thing I'd want to throw in too is if you're building defenses, there's now a need to build defenses.
Right.
And so now you have some sort of ominous threat looming on the outside as well.
Right.
Or it could just be that the hamlet has grown up to the point that there's too many people here to actually evacuate to the nearest walled city.
Fair, yeah.
And so because there are a huge number of people here, they have decided amongst themselves that, hey, we need a wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that was a lot of how it happened in medieval Europe as well, is the population just hit a certain critical mass where it just made more sense for them to defend where they were as opposed to go to where the defenses were.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, well.
Wow, I can't believe we've already gone for an hour and 15. Wow, time flies.
This has been a lot of fun. You are a great interview.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm having a great time.
So, John, why don't you tell us where we can find you and your stuff?
Sure. I guess I should mention, even what Tale of the Manticore is for any of the listeners who don't know. It's a hybrid audio drama / actual play. and it's solo as well. And it's a grim, dark OSR style Dungeons and Dragons story that just goes on and on and on and on and on and on. It just never seems to end. Where can you find it? You can get that anywhere podcasts are found. So Apple or Spotify or whatever. It's also on YouTube. Some people I've discovered prefer to listen on YouTube while they're, working around the house or painting minis or whatever. And so if that is your thing, you can get it on YouTube. Of course, it's just audio, so there's nothing to watch. It's just the podcast fed through YouTube. And if you're interested in Pendulum, which is what you just heard us play for the first few rounds of, that and One Shot in the Dark, they're on Drive-Thru RPG. And I did find them, finally. One Shot is $1.50 and Pendulum is 99 cents.
Okay.
So they're very, very cheap. They're dollar store items, folks.
Quite literally, yes.
There is good cost to value ratio.
There's good cost
absolutely.
to value.
Yes.
And we will absolutely put links to your stuff in our show notes. Also, you're still on what remains of the dumpster fire of Twitter. I don't get on there very often, but
I am there.
Yeah, we will put links to your Twitter account on there as well.
I'm at Manticore Tale on Twitter and Tale of the Manticore Podcast on Instagram. And I don't do Facebook. No. It's just a nope for me.
That's all right. I barely do Facebook anymore. I barely do any social media anymore, which makes it very difficult to actually promote. But again, thank you, John, so very much for coming back and joining us. It's been an absolute blast.
Yeah, it's been
super fun.
We love talking with you.
Super fun. Please have me back again. I always have a good time with you guys.
And thank you, everyone, for listening. If you have any comments, suggestions, or ideas, send us an email, undercommontaste@gmail.com, or come and join our Discord. You can find a link to the Discord and all of our other social media stuff on undercommontaste.com, which is now up and live.
Woohoo!
And you can also find our Patreon and our itch store, undercommontaste.itch.io, where you can find our liminal horror adventure Beneath the Lake or my solo RPG Forever Home.
If this is your first time listening, thank you for listening. We're so happy you found us. You can find us wherever you listen to your podcast. As always, give us a rating and review, and we'd like to hear more from you.
Stay safe, everyone, and we will see you again in 2 weeks.
Happy gaming.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Undercommon Taste. Our theme song is Massacre Ann, written and performed by Mary Kroll and used with permission. You can find Mary online at marykroll.bandcamp.com or on Patreon at patreon.com/Dr. Mary C. Kroll. Our logo is by David Sutherland. You can find more of David's work on deviantart.com/David Sutherland or on instagram.com/Willex_73. We'll be back in 2 weeks, so stay safe, and we'll see you then.